welcome everyone to a Good Vibes gaming discussion, one that's been a whole year in the making. It is the 2021 Game of the Year discussion, and I am joined, as always, by my good friend and GVG co-founder Ash Paulson, our editor and just wonderful person all around, Brandon Miracle, and our graphics and just, again, another wonderful person. Man, we're surrounded by wonderful people. Daniel Alba, welcome to all three of you as we discuss our Games of the Year 2021, specifically our top 3 Games of the Year, and which ones really stood out for us. And I feel like this is the best way to do it because obviously not all of us are going to be able to play every single game, and there's a lot out there to enjoy and see, and I wish I could play more. Not going to happen. Yeah. Not with a kid, not with work and all that stuff. Unfortunately, Steve is still dealing with his own, not issues, but has things to take care of himself. So he's not here. We might get an addendum from him later, but for now...
Yeah. He's still on his travels with family. Like, he's been with his family for the holidays, and he's still doing all that. But he'll be back pretty soon. And like you said, Derrick, hopefully he'll do a little addendum, and you can get his picks for the top 3 games of the year as well.
The Steve-focused Game of the Year. You gotta love it. You gotta love it. So, let's get this bad boy off to a start. And what better way to start than with our bad boy himself, Daniel.
You are a bad boy now.
Yeah,
that hair.
Man. It's the hair. You're like, oh, he's just obviously a bad boy. Daniel,
sinister.
What is your number 3 Game of the Year of 2021?
All right, so let's start this one off. 2021 in general was a year where for titles that we kind of never thought we'd see come back, or at least had been waiting for a long time. Games like Famicom Detective Club, a new WarioWare, The Great Ace Attorney, even announcements like a remastered Advance Wars. And then there were titles that literally took over a decade to actually happen. I think one will come up a bit later, but another one up there is, for my top 3 of the Game of the Year, would be Neo, The World Ends With You.
Nice.
And this game, it immediately took what I loved from the first game and it turned it into something new and yet nostalgic that could be played on a console. So you assume the role of Rindo, who, along with his friend Fred, get caught up in an accident that leads you to the underground for what is known as the Reaper's Game. And unlike the original game, you're placed with teams, and you have to clear objectives alongside competing with other teams during the week trial. And so this is where you get introduced to a huge cast of memorable characters. Like, they're all very distinct with their own unique quirks and ways of speaking, and there's even returning characters from the first game. When you're not exploring and completing objectives in Shibuya, you're battling using the pin system. Now, these pins from the first game as well, they have a specific button that needs to be pressed in order to be used. They could be a face or a shoulder button, and when you use it up, it'll enter a cooldown. The trick is that each character will use the single pin that they're assigned, so you gotta manage positioning both your character and also the cooldown of your pins. Like, if you use it all at once, then you'll be vulnerable for several seconds. This is the way where you're thinking with multiple parts of your brain. It's kind of a good callback to the battles done in the first game, where you're simultaneously playing with the top and bottom screen character with different controls. So essentially, each battle is accompanied also with amazing music. If you played the first game, you know what you're in for. These remixes are songs from previous games as well, and it's a mix of genres that really puts you in that hip culture of art and fashion that you see in Shibuya. It's well integrated too. Like, one of your skills is actually tapping the button to the beat of the song, by using that, you can traverse the overworld faster, which I thought was a really
so
cool.
That's awesome.
I didn't know that. That's so cool.
Yeah, it adds a beat over the song that you're playing, and it's just a really cool addition.
So cool.
Like, I've said this a lot, even with our year in review discussion, but playing the previous game also goes a long way. You go from learning a few nods here and there to understanding bits of lore that is more or less integral to the game by the last few hours. Fans of the first and those who have played the new extra chapter in Final Remix will also be rewarded. So it's a really cool way to just kind of bring it all together. And kind of similar to Kingdom Hearts, you can earn secret reports that really tie everything in together at the end too. They did the same thing that they did with the first game, and it makes you give a whole new perspective on the game by the time you get those at the end. It's a whole experience. So I've talked a lot now. Have you guys have any experience with this game?
Well, obviously I've only played the first 5 hours, and I'm not going to go into the typical story. It's whatever. Just focus on the game itself. I played about the first 5-6 hours, and I couldn't agree more. Like, I loved how they took the battle system from the original DS game and just transferred it over to a 3D game, and it works. Like, your partners don't have unique abilities anymore. Everybody just uses the pins, and I think that's way easier to keep track of than having each partner have their own thing. That was always my issue. I just found the most basic thing I could do with them in the original game on the DS, and so I could just keep them active. Like, I think it was with Beat, I always just pushed down, 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 so I could keep them going and moving. I feel like I have more control with Neo and know what I can do. So, and especially the setups where you use one and it's like combo chance, hit him with the other person, bam, do more damage, and then change into the other. And that's just with the first 5 hours. It felt really satisfying. And it is already addictive to like upgrade and evolve all your pins so you can get them all, see them all, and enjoy the fashions.
It's great for completionists.
Oh yeah, it's a lot of hours for completionists. And they have a whole list. Like, they show you, like, here's all the food you've eaten, here's all the clothes you've gotten, here's how many you're missing. And so there's oh, you want to fill that board, you're gonna be playing a while, it seems. Right. I do have to ask you, Daniel, please tell me they don't sequel bait at the end of this game, because obviously with it not getting a lot of sales this year, unfortunately, and Square being a little disappointed with the sales, hopefully that it seems unlikely we'll get another sequel unless it's another 10 years down the line. So please let it be a complete story. Is it a complete story?
I think they set it up so that without spoiling too much, I think it does pretty much complete most of these characters' arcs. It's set in a way that you don't have to worry about them if they do have a sequel, that there will be one. It's interesting because in Final Remix, I think one of the extra secret reports that you get from that game, it kind of hints to 2 boys, and those I'm assuming would be Rindo and Fret in this game. So they kind of knew what was being led into. But as far as this game goes, and as far as what I've read in the secret reports, I think it does pretty much tie this game up to what it is, and it's not going to go any further if they plan. I think they're just having it safe so that if there is room for a sequel, they'll have one, but if there isn't going to be one, then it's kind of a more or less completed package by the end.
Capcom, who we recently just found out canceled Mega Man ZX3 after a huge cliffhanger. I don't think Square Enix get to be disappointed in this game's sales because they didn't market it at all. They didn't advertise this game. They sent it out to die. Seriously.
We did absolutely nothing. We're all out of ideas.
Yeah.
But I did play the demo on my PS5, and I loved it. I won't go too far into the weeds because I mentioned this on an episode of TNT recently, but I never got to finish the original game on DS, and I like to play games in sequential order, when they're part of a series. So this is a game I really want to play, but it's just one that fell through the cracks for me because I hadn't finished the original game, and I want to do that first before I come back to Neo. But I loved what I played of it. Straight up, I loved everything I played of the demo, and it's a game that I intend to come back to, but it also came out in the same day as the Great Ace Attorney Chronicles, and as y'all know, I've been playing that with my wife over the past several months. So that I had to give that one, more clout. But yeah, this is a game I really want to come back to, and I'm so glad that you loved it as much as you did, Daniel.
Yeah, I can't only sing his praises because some of the negatives is that every character does have a certain ability. Like, some characters can dive into the mind and kind of like fix their internal struggles, or like kind of remind other characters of things that happened previously, kind of like what Neku did in the other game. But Rindo's is specifically called Replay, where you kind of have the whole go back in time mechanic and kind of like fix things that happened beforehand, even though your other party members don't know what's going on. And even though it was a good mechanic and I enjoyed it, it kind of dragged on and kind of padded things out, whereas there were some days that he had to keep on replaying, and it's like, we just had to solve this one day and get on with the next one. This is something that wasn't there in the original game. But
yeah, the original you had several sets of days, several sets of weeks, and I hope. Oh God, did they have? Is it only this 1 week and it's padded out because of that replay function?
Oh, it's not. It's not just God. 1 week. Don't worry about it. Because
that'd be a little ridiculous. Like, oh my God, things keep going wrong in this day. What is happening?
Yeah, everything that was set for the trailers and such was just within week 1, and then even with week 2, you learn things that they couldn't reveal, or else it would be spoiling too much. So they
True.
really kind of try to keep things under wraps for that. And,
That's good.
But yeah, I think the only other thing was that there's a certain objective where it's kind of like Turf Wars, where you're trying to claim, defeat the noise and claim ownership of certain areas, and that kind of drags on kind of too long because you got to fight a lot more monsters. And if you don't know what to do, it takes a moment, but it's not too bad. I mean, you have a great party of characters. A party of characters, I swear. By the end of the game, that party of characters kept surprising me. It was such a wild ride, and yeah, I think if anyone gets into the game at this point, like they'll have a good time with it. But yeah, that's
Nice.
That's essentially my number 3.
Awesome.
Nice.
I can't argue
Very
with
good.
that. I've heard a lot of people say that this is their game of the year as well, so feels fitting.
Wow.
It's right up my art aesthetic and style, so that's a big plus for it too.
I love the aesthetics of Neo. Yeah, absolutely.
I'm guessing you don't have any familiarity with it, Brandon. Just offhand, it doesn't seem like it.
No, this is something that I definitely want to play. The issue is that I haven't played the original, and I don't want to play it on Switch. I want to play it on DS.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah,
I mean-
and I remember, Derek, you telling me that when I do play the original, if I play it on Switch, it should be in handheld mode, not in
Yes.
TV mode. Yeah,
Absolutely.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay.
Yeah, the DS version is probably the best example of what the touchscreen can do because it uses every single possible motion from tapping, swiping, swirling.
So
blowing
trying to
the mic.
recreate that sort of
Yeah.
thing with a Pro Controller doesn't really work. So
Yeah.
it was hell
Yeah.
capturing footage because, I have to play
sure.
in docked.
Oh,
Yeah.
right, okay. Oh,
Yeah, it
back
just
in the good
doesn't
old days
seem-
when touching was good.
It just doesn't seem like it would translate well, even to like the Switch screen itself, just given how it worked.
It played fine. If you have a stylus that works pretty well with the Switch screen, go for it. Probably look pretty good on the OLED. So, yeah.
Oh
Good
yeah,
stuff.
yeah, definitely.
Maybe I will try it.
Yeah, worth a shot. I don't know if there's a demo, but take a look. All right. Well, let's see. What kind of rotation do we have here? Do I go with Brandon, who's still trying to decide on his list, or do I go with Ash, who is
I've
convinced
done it.
that he's going to upset people with his list?
With one
have
part of
figured
my
mine
list.
out.
With one part of it.
Okay, with
But
one
Brandon
part
says
of it.
he's ready,
Yeah.
so we're just going to go in clockwise order from Daniel in that case. Brandon,
All right.
what is your number 3 game of the year?
It's a game that I don't think I've talked about at all on GVG
All
ever.
right.
All right.
It's called
Surprise.
Valheim, or Valheim.
Oh, I've heard of this.
Came out on PC in February. And basically, you're dropped on this island as a Viking with nothing. You start farming some resources, building axes and weapons, and you build a homestead, and you gather your friends, and you fight bosses. That's basically it.
So-
You
Fair
learn-
enough.
All right.
So whenever you obtain new resources in the game, you learn recipes that involve those resources. And then you build those recipes, and typically those recipes will give you items that will then give you access to new resources. And then you get those resources and get another new recipe, and the cycle continues. It's just a really fun loop. It might sound familiar because I'm into a something similar to that.
I mean, are you hunting creatures while you're playing in Valheim?
You do, but they're more of a threat to you than they are a resource. You can use their resources to build certain things, but I'd say by and large, you're trying to survive. Think of something more similar to like Rust, I guess, but with a lot better theming. And this really kind of cool, almost PS1 low poly, low texture look that I find really attractive.
Yeah,
also,
I'm looking at screenshots right now. It's I like the color palette. It's a lush world, it seems.
It is. There's a lot of biomes, and you can play with a ton of friends. Like me and like 12, 13 other friends just hopped onto a private server that my friend paid for, and we basically built an entire town. We had built such a big
cool.
town amongst ourselves that we started making the game lag because there was so many things on screen.
Wow.
But it's a really fun multiplayer experience. and they're constantly updating it, so I plan to wait like maybe a year or two and come back to it when there's a lot more stuff and keep going. Because as it is right now, I poured in 80 hours and we beat the current final boss, and we're like, okay, we're good for now.
Nice.
Be back in the next... It's an MMO. Be back with the next content patch.
Basically.
Right.
Things really open up when you're able to start building ships, like Viking ships. So then you just all hop in a Viking ship, wait for the wind to go the right way, and then just see where it takes you. It's really fun. There's a fun sense of discovery with it.
That's awesome.
Nice.
I've
Like I said,
heard-
I'm looking at screenshots. I like them.
Yeah, I've heard things for a while about this game. Survival games, not really my bag, but I totally get their appeal. And it seemed like a good one there. Again, I heard a lot of good buzz about this.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't even say that survival is necessarily my genre. It's just more or less the experience you get to have with the friends that you play with that makes it. Because it's like, it's emergent gameplay, so the stories that take place are literally what happens to you. And
Oh, that's cool.
fun.
Kind of in
Lets
a
you
Breath
be
of the
imaginative.
Wild-esque way, except in a group setting
Exactly.
instead of a solo setting, it sounds like.
Right.
Okay. So
and
the
it
real
was always-
Valheim are the friends we met along the way, is what you're saying.
Exactly. I couldn't
Nice.
put it any better.
Beautiful. I love it.
Awesome.
Daniel, do you have any experience with Valheim?
I unfortunately do not. I wasn't expecting Brandon to bring this one on us. So.
It happens. It happens.
Wow.
That's all right.
We've got all of Good Vibes Arcade here. Brandon, you've played Valheim with a bunch of your friends, but you haven't played it with Daniel?
This was back in
Ouch.
February.
Yeah. Oh,
Fair enough,
yeah,
fair
It
enough.
wasn't a
Fair
thing
enough.
yet.
Fair excuse.
I don't know
Fair
how
Alright.
we were
excuse.
chatting by then.
Yeah.
Trial by fire, going to get Daniel into Valheim.
It's gonna
There's
happen.
another game Brandon has in mind to get me into before that. So,
Nah,
I might be talking about that later. We'll see.
oh, bye.
Okay.
fair enough. All right. Well, with that, I guess unless there's anything else you wanted to say about Valheim, we can move on to Ash's apparently controversial pick.
Bring it on, Ash.
Maybe not controversial, but I do think this is going to ruffle a few feathers just because of the placement. And this is a game that I'm reasonably sure is going to come up later on in this discussion. But I'm going to go ahead and rip off the Band-Aid now and say that my number 3 game of the year is Metroid Dread. I love this game. I loved it. But as you all remember, as we were talking about it and comparing notes and comparing our experiences, I was kind of the lone holdout in the Great Vibes territory until the very end. And it was the final boss and the final sequence and the story revelations and all that that really pushed it into pure bliss territory for me. And it still is in that territory. But I wasn't quite pushed into pure bliss as soon as I think some of the rest of you were. And reflecting on it now, I love this game. I love Metroid Dread, and particularly the movement. As I've said before, Samus herself feels so organic to, she feels like an organic part of the world she inhabits. Planet ZDR, the way she moves through each area, and the way her character model she feels like she's part of that world, and the movement is so slick, and it's so natural, and it feels so good just to control Samus in this game. And the story goes to some really interesting places I didn't really expect. I was trying to figure out what the twist was going to be, what was going on the whole time, and I got part of it right, but part of it I didn't see coming at all, particularly some of the in-game revelations. And of course, no spoilers here, we're not going to go into spoilers, but and the game looked slick, just a great game overall. But a fantastic game overall, but I did have some pacing issues, especially in the latter half of the game. And I felt as though one particular mini-boss was reused a couple of too many times for my liking. And that kind of brought down the overall experience for me relative to my top 2, my number 2 and number 1 games of the year. But I still love this game to death. I think we're going to be talking about it a lot more throughout this discussion. But it didn't quite hit that just stellar height that I would need for a number 1 game of the year, right? And as much as I love Metroid Dread, I really wrestled with this a lot over the past several days. Like, is it number 3 or number 2? And that's kind of where I was at. I was like, it was either going to be number 3 or number 2, but I ultimately settled on number 3 because as much as I loved it, there were a couple of blemishes, didn't quite get it there for me. at the very top. But I still love this game to death. I do wish the soundtrack was a bit more memorable. The soundtrack is...
That is the one point I will concede. Is like,
Yeah.
I mean, obviously varying taste, but the soundtrack, yeah, that is the weakest part of this game.
Yeah, like most of the songs that I like in the soundtrack are rearrangements of songs from previous games in the Metroid series. And really the only original song that super stands out to me, like a couple of months after I played it, was the underwater area, which I think was it Barinia? Is that what it was called?
I think.
I
don't remember the location names that well, to be honest.
Right.
I don't either.
Yeah, but the underwater area is the one area song that really still stands out to me a couple of months later. So I do wish the soundtrack was a bit more memorable, but I do love the way that this game wraps up, the current storyline with the 2D Metroid games, and I'm so excited to see where they take the series next. And again, the gameplay itself, it's phenomenal. Controlling Samus probably has my favorite controls of the year, if I'm being honest. Metroid Dread, just the feeling of playing that game and controlling Samus in this world is just, you feel like you are her. You feel like it's just one-to-one control, and you feel so overpowered, right? Like when you're running back through older areas later on in the game with all these upgrades, it does that power creep thing really well, where at the very beginning you feel vulnerable, you're taking a lot of damage, bosses are imposing, but then as you get, as you upgrade Samus and you get all these different abilities, she starts just feeling like a walking tank. And except not walking, she's running and sprinting and dodging, and she's like this agile, crazy acrobatic tank, and it's awesome. The power fantasy there is real. And the final boss is one of my favorite final boss fights ever, and might be my favorite final boss of this year. Like, what an incredible fight. But it's just a couple of blemishes kept it from the top positions for me, but it is an easy number 3 for me, for sure.
Yeah. Usually we all discuss, obviously, with the previous ones, but as you said, you could probably expect it on other lists.
Had a feeling.
I guess it's an opportunity. If it's not on any of our other lists, you can talk about it now. Otherwise, I guess we can just move on.
Yeah, I know. I mean, it's probably best not to talk about it too much more right now,
right,
because I feel like it's going to come up multiple times.
It does seem like that. So yeah. I think people can put their pitchforks away. I didn't say anything bad about the game.
Fine.
It's still in the top 3. So
I think it was more that I think probably folks are expecting it to be number 1 or number 2, but we'll see. Maybe I
don't know. We'll see how people react. I mean, there's always somebody who's like, nah, it didn't hit for me. So
yeah. Or maybe it's really just ruffling Chozo feathers, and everybody else is going to be unaffected.
I know Samus ruffled those Chozo feathers.
That's for sure.
Sure did.
All right then. Well, I guess it's my turn. And I struggled for my number 3 because I was between 4 different games, each for their own reasons for why they might be my third favorite game of the year. And I just wasn't sure where to come out on. It's like, do I want to like... I was trying to think of my criteria. It's just like, what had me the most absorbed from these other 4 games that did not make the top 2. And ultimately, the one that came out on top, the Great Ace Attorney Chronicles. It's so
nice. It's
so good. It's so
Such
I'm so glad we got this game. These games, really, like this duo. And but to me, they are one. They you have to play them back to back. You get decent enjoyment, but you're left with a lot of questions for the first game. And the second game is mostly based on the first game and what the revelations from that are, and built up off of that. Enough that I think that it's worth playing back to back. That said, these are very long. These are beefy Ace Attorney games compared to the originals.
They really are.
They can take a lot out of you, so it's probably good to pace yourself. But man, I did not. I heard good things, but I didn't know what to expect going into it, and especially with the translation. And
it's so good.
It made it tougher on themselves just because the first 3 games being set in America, or California, and having all these odd things. So how do we have this obviously Japanese thing going to the UK? But the elements are just, it works. You might miss on some of the in-jokes because of that. but I think enough get through that it's worth looking up some of the name origins or some of the names used, because then all of a sudden
eat your hamburgers, Apollo.
Yeah, exactly. Because then you start seeing the more connections that actually showed up. But as a story itself, there are some truly great mysteries here. A lot of times the villain is kind of like who the villain is kind of obvious, but getting it nailed, figuring out, that is really satisfying. And there's some amazing revelations that happen as you go through. And I don't know. I mean, ostensibly, it doesn't really do anything different from past Ace Attorney games. It's just a nice 3D look, using those characters. There's a lot of great animations to it, and the story is just a lot of fun. I will never forget the animation of Ryunosuke the first time he went, and there was no sound. It was like,
it's so good. He like looks down.
He's like looks down. It's like there's supposed to be a boom. Like that's so good. That is such a good one.
And the way his eyes like shift around when he's really nervous.
Exactly. The shifting
around. It makes the first time that he actually does it successfully feel really good.
And that's the thing is like Ryunosuke feels so much more competent than Phoenix a lot of the time. He's just on fire.
At least in the earlier games.
And Susato and all of her moves and flipping
she's so great,
flipping him around. Like the cast of characters is fantastic. And I know your wife had issues with Herlock Sholmes at first, but
I think he does grow on her.
He does grow on you. There's some wonderful things with him, especially
he's
when
he's so lovable.
I know. He seems a little too incompetent, but I don't know. I love his introduction. That little animated cutscene that plays, like it feels like a Sherlock Holmes type thing. It works, all the crazy gadgets, and as you go along, like you have these gadgets that like obviously point out things, but they're not accepted in court. So you got to find other methods. Like this is true, but you got to prove it to court without Herlock's aid. And I think that's a nice twist on a lot of things and convincing them, and even talking to the various members of the court and trying to convince them the other way. There's enough here that drew me in and just made it a great time.
That's a great solution to issues that like other Ace Attorney games have had. Like you have to come to certain conclusions during the trial, and that could make it difficult for you to pull the right evidence or pull the right person when you're asked to. But giving you that information up front in a way that you can't present it to court and having to figure out how to is a much better solution to that problem.
And it still stumped me a few times, so I'm like, what do I need to do? What do I need to grab? I just forgot that one little piece of information that would have carried me to the next bit. And some of the things that happened in the final I was going to say three, but two, but really the final three chapters of Greatest Attorney Chronicles 2, it is like it just pulls you in. It does stuff with the series that you've never seen before, such as Case 2 of the first game not having a trial.
That was wild.
Yeah.
It's a big surprise.
So
you
wild.
do not see it coming, and it's like it throws you enough curveballs. But I kind of like that because it kind of builds itself. Since Ryunosuke is ostensibly not a lawyer, it builds up to it feeling more like classic Ace Attorney. It works as a prequel in that way, seeing the gameplay evolve. So I don't know. It just stuck with me, and I like. It's a game from years ago that we just happened to get this year, but man, it's a good package and makes me ache for other Ace Attorney collections like this that we haven't got. Like the Investigations
second trilogy,
duology,
please.
Yeah, second trilogy, the
trilogy.
Investigations duology. Give us that stuff on the Switch, please. I hope this sold well enough because, God, I loved it.
One thing I wish you could do, and this is like such a minor quibble, but one thing I do wish you could do, and my wife agrees actually, is I wish you could have the Japanese voice track for the Japanese characters and the English voice track for the Western characters.
Oh, that'd be cool.
It would be cool if you could do that, because it's weird to see like Von Zeke speaking in Japanese, right? Just as it's equally weird to see Ryunosuke speaking in this with this English accent, this British accent. It doesn't really make sense.
Actually,
but
I would argue it does make sense because
fair enough.
They learned English from the British. So it makes sense that they picked up the accents.
Yeah,
that is true. Yeah.
I do like a lot of what this game adds to the formula, though. Like, I think the jury system is really cool. And the jurors are hilarious.
Oh God,
and all the different facial tics and animations. And I'm as you know, Derek, I'm in the last case of the first game, and I'm closing in on the end. And my wife and I cannot wait to see what happens because these characters are just so arresting. And man. Obviously, Ace Attorney is a series that has been very good at giving you very punchable prosecutors to defeat in court, but I never would have imagined that Von Zieks would be even more punchable than Edgeworth and Godot and Franziska. I mean, this guy he's the racist prosecutor. And that's one thing I find really interesting about this game is its honest portrayal of anti-Japanese racism at the time. And they don't shy away from it. They go all in. And he's my learned Nipponese friend. You just want to beat him so bad.
Just this condescension. And
he really does. And,
I am so curious
does the court.
how you'll continue to feel about Von Zieks as time goes on.
I really have no idea what to expect from him long term other than just racism. And that alone is enough to make you want to defeat him in court, let alone the fact that you know that your clients typically are innocent and you want to defend them. But and speaking of clients, special shout outs to Gina, one of my favorite new characters. Maybe not new since this is an older game technically, but one of my new to me characters. She's awesome.
Gina's great. Gina is so much fun, and I'm blanking on his name, but short Scottish dude from Case 3, very interesting defendant. McGilded, that's it.
Oh, Magnus McGilded. He's such an interesting character. I love his design.
Hearing your reactions to McGilded over time was a lot of fun.
Right. No, this is a game that really does keep you guessing, and I really love it. And if we were to expand this to top 5, and go for like 6+ hours, you'd probably see this game in my top 5. But we could, there are
which
4
is
of us.
Impressive considering you only played half of it.
That's true. Yeah, I haven't even finished it yet. And if it didn't hit my top 5, it would be just outside it. Like it would be really close.
Now, obviously, it's funny. We both chose a game that came out on the same day as our top number 3, Daniel. So obviously, you don't have much to say about Great Ace Attorney Chronicles. But Brandon, you've played a bit. How do you feel?
I would put this on the upper end of the whole Ace Attorney series, if you ask me. Like, I think this is the best it's ever been.
Ooh.
I'm also not done yet, so I can't say for sure. But if it only gets better, it's hard to say otherwise, Yeah.
Where are you at? Do you know?
I think I'm in the middle of case 4 of game 1. My wife, on the other hand, I think has played the whole thing.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
She flew through it after it came out.
Nice.
It's easy to just, I don't know, lose yourself in it. It's literally like a good book.
It is.
It is.
I played a lot of it on the plane from PAX. And that is a good game to get some hours away when you're flying in a plane. I couldn't get myself to stop. I was like, we've landed. I want to keep going.
Yeah.
Fair, yeah.
I think I would have finished it by now if I but it also wouldn't be as fun because like my wife and I love playing the whole Ace Attorney series together. So of course we're gonna play it.
I can only imagine when you play together that she's like, oh, it's just that evidence, go to that.
Yeah.
Like she just knows it and like.
Typically we agree. There are very few times where we've disagreed on which evidence to present. Typically we're pretty good. We come together pretty well and like think the same things and but it's just so much. It's so fun to react to these characters and to the plot twist together, right? It's just something that ever since I played the original game on DS, and I was like, babes, years ago, I was like, I think this will be a game that you love. We should try playing it together. So we played the WiiWare version together, and she fell in love. So we played all 3 on WiiWare, and then we were just waiting for another TV-friendly Ace Attorney game to come out, and it ended up being this all these years later, because we're still waiting on that second trilogy, and we tried playing Apollo Justice on my DS, and it just wasn't. It's too cramped. It's not fun that.
It's hard to play DS games together unless you're able to project it on the TV or something like that.
Yeah. No, I love this game. Plus, shout out to the soundtrack. Kazuma's theme is one of my favorite songs this year. It's so good. and captures his character so well, and just some of the more tragic elements of the game's story for sure.
Yeah, good stuff all around.
This title, I had not, unfortunately, as you know, 2 games came out on the same day, and I'm like the only one around here that chose Neo. But I will leave you with this. What do you call it when a character like Sholmes doesn't vibe with you right away?
I'm not sure.
Not sure.
No hit, Herlock. And I'm going to leave the conversation with that.
Wow.
We'll continue onward now.
That's like a
Wow.
mic drops. I call that a mic
Jeez.
drop, but it's your turn next for your number 2. So let's just bring it over back to you, Daniel. What is your number 2 game of the year?
So continuing the trend of this one, number 2 for me, I didn't give it number 1. I had trouble putting number 1 and 2 together, but number 2 for me was going to be Metroid Dread, which is a game that obviously we all had some pretty blissful feelings about throughout our experiences talking about it, and even dedicated whole discussions about it. So honestly, there's not a whole lot more I feel like we can say about this game, but I feel like this one of the best characterizations of Samus I think we've ever had, as far as her movements, how she speaks with her movements is something that I don't think that any other Metroid game has been able to capture. And Mercury Steam really just learned and took whatever they had from Samus Returns and just amped it up for this game. And it just, the fact that even just the way Nintendo really pushed this game out and got people interested in the Metroid series, I think that's another point for the best games that came out during the year that isn't spoken of as much, is how much buzz did it make? How much did people talk about this game? I have a lot of people that I know who they went back, they dusted off their Wii U and played the like Samus Metroid Zero Mission or Fusion, because they wanted to learn more about Samus and they wanted to play more of the series that people were really talking about and buzzing about. And I went back too. I went and played. I didn't own it on my Wii U, but I played Zero Mission as well, just to kind of get myself back in the feel for the series. And it's just amazing to compare from then and now, how it carries and how well the game just plays. She's just that kind of badass that everyone has been waiting for, just to see return. And I'm just so happy to see this series have all this light shed onto it, and getting people ready now, like, oh right, now we're gonna get ready for Metroid Prime 4. And it's just, what a game. Like, definitely
some of the animations in the boss fight cutscenes when she's like styling on the bosses are so cool. You said it perfectly, Daniel. Like, she speaks through her movements, and she's so, you can tell this is far from her first rodeo. She's done this shit before, man. She's saved the galaxy multiple times. Yeah, this is experienced, hardened Samus, and she's just styling on all these bosses, and it adds to the power fantasy, right? And it's like Team Ninja tried to do that with Other M, and I think with the gameplay they somewhat succeeded, but it was all just completely countered by her horrible representation in that game's story. Whereas here in Dread, she's just a badass through and through.
Yeah, that first boss that they especially displayed on the demo back when they first announced the game, like, you can see it when the battle's over and she's just standing there in her power pose. She's just charging it very nonchalantly, walking around very slowly and very, very methodically, and just the way that it's just the confidence in that, the way that she moves, it's just something that I don't see too often. Like, you don't see her face, so they really have to translate what she's feeling through all of her movements. So that's just something I really enjoyed, and like something I really appreciate for this kind of game. But yeah, like some of the things that we already talked about, music could have been something a bit more memorable. I remember more songs from Samus Returns, which is from the Game Boy,
right,
than the music I hear in Dread. So,
well, didn't Samus Returns borrow a lot from Metroid Prime?
I think so. There's a few Prime remixes as well. Prime has a great soundtrack. If I
remember correctly.
It's really good. Yeah.
Prime has a great soundtrack. Yeah. But I agree. Even Metroid, the original Game Boy version of Metroid 2: Return of Samus has a more memorable soundtrack to me. Like, I can easily pick out that first area theme right in my head right now and start humming it, whereas I would be hard-pressed to remember almost anything from Dread soundtrack. But on the other hand, though, its sound design is fantastic. The environmental sounds, the monster sounds, like the sound effect. Yeah, like the sound design's great. Just the soundtrack itself is a bit lacking. But I have to say, and I feel like I maybe glossed over this when I talked about it earlier, but I'm looking at screenshots of Dread right now just to kind of, just put myself back in the mindset of Planet ZER. And this is a beautiful game. Beautiful game. And just a poster child for the idea that you don't have to have the best specs. You don't have to have the most powerful stuff under the hood. The Switch can push out some really incredible looking games. Would this game look better at 4K? Of course it would. But it's not necessary. This game looks amazing the way it is.
Yeah, if you've got the art direction, you can make something look really fantastic on whatever you're developing for.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So,
Yep. Well, I guess this will come up later again, I'm sure. So,
yeah, there's a few more chances to talk about this.
Yeah.
So, let's just go ahead and shift over to Brandon. Brandon, what is your number 2 game of the year?
Well, my number 2 is Metro. No, it's not. It's Monster Hunter Stories 2, actually.
Ooh, nice.
Oh, I see.
This game did way more for me than I ever expected, especially coming off of the first one on 3DS, which I would consider to be average to good. Monster Hunter Stories 2 feels like that premium JRPG that you would come to expect from some of these other companies. And one of the things that really stuck with me was especially its story, which is a lot more adult, I guess, than the first one. The first one plays out more like a Saturday morning cartoon. This one feels like some bad shit's about to happen.
About to have a bad time.
Oh, no.
It's taking that cartoon and aging it up a little bit, because, I mean, I love the dichotomy of some bad things are going to happen. Let's get our monsties and take them down.
Yeah. They've done a lot with Monster Hunter Stories 2 that I really appreciate. One of the characters from the first game that I honestly couldn't stand really too well was Naviru. He's the feline with the watermelon head.
Oh, no.
Oh, okay.
But he went from being kind of that annoying sidekick character that doesn't really need to be there to being a character I genuinely really, really liked. He doesn't contribute to the story in a lot of ways, but he does act as your character's voice. And you know what? He's got some good things to say a lot of the time. I appreciate him more now, especially in his animations. They make his face all squishy. And he has relationships with all the characters, so there's something to kind of attach yourself to. There's a character in the second major area of the game who is allergic to cats, but he's not allergic to Naviru for some reason. And they kind of bond over the fact that Naviru's the only cat that he can get close to. But, this game is very power friendshipy. It captures those elements of Pokemon that I really liked with the original anime. Just, it's that bond that you have with your partner. And it's really cool in this game, especially because your partner is literally the world-ending threat. And it's you and your Rathalos against the world, basically. Like, you're the one person who's willing to stand up for your Rathalos when everyone else thinks that Rathalos is going to be the doom of humanity. And I really liked that. It made the stakes feel a lot higher than the original. And it just made me appreciate that character dynamic a lot. And then
Nice.
I told you guys this before, but I spent a lot of this game playing multiplayer in the post-game. I've probably tripled my playtime just playing multiplayer.
Wow.
I was going to ask, how long is the base game?
Kind of hard for me to remember. I'd say, I think you could get away with like 30 or 40 hours.
Okay.
If you're just being casual about it, if you spend time grinding or, fusing monsties together to get different abilities and stuff. But if you bum rush it, you can get through it pretty quickly. It's not something that's going to take you an eternity.
Gotcha.
But my one of my good friends, Levi, and I, this was a game that we basically used as an excuse to hang out, because he lives very far away from me, so we don't get to see each other very often. So, like, every day, once we're both done working, we'd both hop into Monster Hunter Stories 2, collect some eggs, fight some monsters, and it was a really good bonding experience. So that's one of the reasons it ends up pretty high on my list here. Other than that, it's gorgeous. The voice acting is superb. It's got great music. Yeah. And I love Monster Hunter.
Nice.
So there you go.
I mean, that
Yes,
kind of
you
fits
do.
in itself. I've not got to check it out myself other than watching Amy play a little bit, and it looks so much more polished than the original. Like, I was like, the original, when I played the original, I was like, this is cute. But that's all I thought. I was like, nothing like drawing me in. It's just like, it's cute. It's something different. It's something maybe more for kids who want to get into Monster Hunter but can't handle the more complex aspects of that one. This definitely is a production upgrade, and it's sold well enough that we're going to get a Stories 3. Like, I think this just became a new priority for Capcom as a spin-off.
Yeah.
It wouldn't surprise me.
Definitely.
Yeah.
There's one element of the story I forgot to mention that I really latched onto, and that's the fact that there are the Monster Hunter riders who you play as, and then of course there are the Monster Hunters themselves, and they don't see eye to eye. Like,
Oh, that's interesting.
riders are like,
I never thought about that.
riders are like, monsters are your friends. You should establish a bond with them and, live together in harmony. And the hunters are like, no, monsters are evil. We're gonna kill them and turn them into kitchen knives and stuff.
And that's interesting because in other Monster Hunter games, in the mainline games, you're very much playing from the other side of that line, of that divide, where you're playing as the hunters. So that's interesting, huh?
And very
I never thought about
often
that.
in those games, there are these monsters that are quite literally world-ending threats, and a lot of the time, they're just monsters doing their natural thing in their habitat. It just happens to be really stressful for everybody else who's nearby.
Has Monster Hunter shown any riders in the main series?
Not yet, but I'm starting to think that's going to happen.
Yeah, they have that sort of
Maybe in
ideological
Sunburst. Yeah.
clashing a bit more now. That would be interesting. It would be kind of funny that in some way that they're pitting the two fandoms against each other, the ones who prefer stories and ones who prefer mainline. So.
Yeah,
Oh,
it's
jeez, it
pretty
sounds
neat.
like Persona fans versus SNT fans or something.
See, I was
no.
thinking of like
Oh,
the
God.
story of Pokemon Black and White, where it's like we need to free the Pokemon, like they're being enslaved.
Yeah.
It's like I would laugh my butt off if mainline Monster Hunter called out the riders and be like, "You're getting on us for killing them and using their parts for tools and whatnot. You're stealing their babies." That's how's that the story? How's that forming a friendship?
Yeah.
You're stealing their babies.
Kinda screwed
to
up.
print on you.
And that's not to say that
um,
the writers aren't using monster parts to make stuff, because they definitely still are.
Oh, that's awkward. Okay.
Oh,
Now,
well.
I feel like I need to give this game another look because I played the demo and I like parts of it, but I kind of bounced off other parts, and I didn't really feel like I enjoyed it enough to get the full game, to buy the game and just play it. But hearing you talk about it, Brandon, I feel like maybe I need to give it another shot because I love my Power of Friendship stories, and there's no denying that this game's art style and overall color palette are beautiful. I said this before in a TNT recently, but short of Nintendo themselves, I feel like Capcom are the devs that are doing the most work with the Switch hardware in terms of pushing out visuals that you just wouldn't think the Switch could actually handle.
Yeah.
And Capcom continue to really impress me on that front. And Stories 2 is a perfect example of that. It's such a beautiful... It's got a Breath of the Wild-esque look to it, but still kind of its own thing, and it's also a lot more stable than Breath of the Wild was in terms of performance.
Yeah.
So it's a great looking game, and one that I feel like after hearing you talk about it, I really maybe should give another shot. I wasn't sure about the battle system. I'm still not sure about it, but I don't know. Hearing you hype it up the way you have, I feel like maybe I missed something and I need to give it another shot.
Those deeper elements of the battle system that reward using different weapon types on specific parts of monsters, that starts coming in a little bit later once you start getting past the small fry and start getting to the more core monsters from Monster Hunter. Because at some point, minions just kind of aren't a thing anymore, and they're all core monsters.
Okay.
So you'll literally be
Natural
in battle.
ramp up.
Yeah, exactly. You'll literally be in battle with your, say you have a hammer, and, hammer does extra damage to the head, so you break the head with the hammer, but now the hammer isn't useful anymore, so you switch to a great sword and you slice off the tail. There's just a lot of strategy around that, and I find it really enjoyable.
Nice.
Gotcha.
I mean, I'd love to check it out if I had the time, but for now, I'll just live vicariously through Amy.
There you
Nice.
go.
Yeah. All right. Well, Ash, let's get to your number 2 pick. What was better than Metroid Dread? How dare you? No, I'm kidding.
All right. Well, as you all know, I've been trying to get my hands on an Xbox, right? A series console, and I've been holding out for a Series X because I have a nice 4K TV. I want to have I want to push the best possible visuals. But I haven't been able to find a Series X. So, in the meantime, one of our amazing patrons, Becca, offered to lend me her extra Series S just so I could play some key Xbox games in time for our Game of the Year discussions to see if that would, affect how I feel about my top 3. Turns out they did. Turns out it did. So, I mainly wanted to play, of course, games like Halo Infinite and Forza Horizon 5 and Psychonauts 2. I didn't get to Psychonauts because I want to play 1 first. I'm in the middle of that, so unfortunately, I couldn't finish Psychonauts 2 in time for consideration for Game of the Year, even though I've heard it tops a lot of people's lists. So that's out. And I did kind of bounce off Halo Infinite, at least its campaign. I kind of bounced off it. I'm just not a big Halo guy. But I think you know where I'm going with this. There's another game that I just mentioned that I got into playing, Forza Horizon 5. You guys know I love my arcade racers, and this is kind of less a pure arcade racer and more like half arcade racer, half driving sim, and you can really focus on whichever side of that you want and still get rewarded for it. Like, this game is a gearhead's dream. If you love cars, this game has 556 of them right now. And they all, at least as I understand it, handle and sound the way they would in real life. But you can tweak these cars to ridiculous amounts of detail, like their suspension, their tires, anti-roll bars. It's ridiculous. But you can also be like me and ignore all that and have the best time just driving through the roads and streets and hills of Mexico. And this is the ultimate chill-out game, you guys. I love just booting up the game and sitting down, putting on the Horizon Base Arena radio station, and just taking in the gorgeous vistas of Mexico. And there are these incredible, there's a day-night cycle, there are these amazing weather effects. Sometimes you drive into storms, and the wind is blowing stuff past you, and it's just, the visual splendor of this game is unreal. And that's on a Series S. I'm not even playing on a Series X right now, and it still looks amazing. But I think the thing I love most about Forza Horizon 5 is that you can play it however you want, and you get rewarded for it regardless. If you want to go do some like official events like road races or dirt races or circuit races, you can do that, and you'll get rewarded for it. Or if you just want to go dick around and roll and drive through the hills of Mexico and pull off crazy stunts and drift everywhere and kind of just goof off, you can, and the game will still give you upgrade points like for your cars just for doing that too. You can run into things and you get points for it. If you just want to go run over as many cacti as you can do that and you get points for it. It's so cool. And it's just that the game has a very festive, like a festival party, like just come and enjoy the sights and sounds of Mexico and have a good time, whatever that means to you. If you're hardcore competitive, have a good time competing hardcore. But if you just want to go drive off into the sunset and take in the sights and explore and find some experience boards to smash that are dotted around this gigantic map, you can do that too, and you're going to have just as good a time. And this game is just, I've only had Becca's Series S for a couple of weeks, and I've already put like twice as much of Metroid Dread's entire runtime into this game, and I'm thinking about it now, and I want to run out the door right now and just go play more. Bye, guys. I'm not finishing this discussion because I just want to go play more of this game. It has got its hooks in me in a way that I just never even anticipated, and maybe there's a little bit of recency bias going on here. I fully admit that. Obviously, it's pretty top of mind because I've been playing it recently, but I had to really be honest with myself, and Forza Horizon 5 has shot up straight to near the top of my list this year just because of its unbelievable quality. And Brandon, I know you've been playing it as well, and I think you probably agree with quite a bit of what I'm saying here, yeah?
Oh, totally. Forza Horizon 5 has one goal in mind. It wants you to have the best goddamn possible time.
Yes.
And it succeeds on every front. And I like what you mentioned about like the whole festival vibe, because every time you turn it on, it feels like you're going to a party.
Yeah.
But it's not congested. You know, people aren't hounding you. You don't have to small talk. You can just go to the party and see what there is to see. And if you're done, just drive somewhere else that's nice and quiet and just, like you said, enjoy the scenery. This game is awesome.
It's so
it just
good.
really
it's
is
just
awesome.
So damn fun, and there's so much to do. You can go look for old barns stashed away in the hills and the jungles, and find cars to restore. You can, there are events where you can like race a plane. You drive into the eye of a storm. Like there's so much to do in this game, and it never really starts feeling samey unless you go out of your way to do the same kind of event. Sequentially. If you just do road race after road race, okay, maybe that'll start feeling a little samey. But even those, the way they're designed, the map is so huge that there are so many different events in different parts of Mexico that have their own biomes. No two races ever really feel the same in this game. And as you said, it's just a game, Brandon, it's just a game that wants you to have the best possible time. And one other thing I have to say that I love about it, and this is just totally for me, but for some reason, there are a bunch of silly nicknames that you can choose for your character name at the beginning if you want. Ashton's in there. Ash is not, weirdly. Ashton and Ashley are both there, but Ash is not. So I ignored those, and I went to the nicknames. And one of them is X. Finally, a game can let me live out my dream of being called X, and this game calls me X, and it's awesome.
Not the reference you're going for. You're Racer X, Ash. You're doing Speed
Racer X. Yeah, but no, obviously I'm being a little bit facetious, but it is pretty funny that the game's like, hey, X, how's it going? Welcome back to Mexico. And but no, I am having the best time with this game. And as I said, maybe there's some recency bias going on here, but I don't think it's just that. Even right now, as I said, as I'm talking about it, I just want to go put in 10 more hours with this game in one sitting. It is so hard for me to stop playing this game. And that's not something I can say about most other games this year.
I've heard good things from other people about this. I don't think it's just you. This is definitely caught on. It's just a fun game. And I've never played a Horizon game myself, Forza Horizon, but I did see my friend play Forza Horizon 4 for a bit, and it did look just the same, sort of what you described. Just chill, run around, do a bunch of stuff. And I haven't played an arcade racer in a very long time. I think the last one I really sat down and played was Burnout Paradise. So it's been a while.
Such a good game. That's such a good game.
It's like. Yeah. This does sound nice. That's all I'll say. It's like there is something just immediately just relaxing about a good arcade racer in this.
For some reason, I did play I played some Forza Horizon 3, and I felt a lot of the same way about it, but it didn't, for whatever reason, pull me in the same way that 5 has. I didn't play 4, but 3 didn't pull me in the same way 5 has, and. One last thing I want to mention is that I've been talking to a couple of patrons and hearing just anecdotally from other people who say that Forza Horizon 5's portrayal of Mexico as a country is very respectful. And I think that's really important to call out. And I'm not the person who would be able to make that call. Nice. I'm not a Mexican. I don't live in Mexico. So I'm not going to make that distinction. I'm a white guy living in America. But I've talked to people who can make that call, and I've heard across the board, at least from those sources, that it is a respectful portrayal of Mexico and Mexican culture, and I think that's really cool.
It's not too surprising considering the innovation of somebody doing sign language in the game.
That's so, and the accessibility features. Yeah. Good point. Thanks for reminding me of that. The accessibility features are off the rails in this game. There are so many. And that we all feel that the more accessible games are, the better in general. And this game goes all the way with accessibility. It's great.
Nice. That is
very nice.
Truly awesome. Oh man, You're making me want an Xbox, Ash. Stop that.
Same here.
I know, right?
Yeah, same with Derrick. I haven't really played any kind of arcade racing games like in depth since Burnout, and it makes y'all make me want to go out. I never thought I'd tell myself I want to play Forza Horizon. Here we are.
Horizon.
It's great, and you can play it on PC as well, though. So if you have a beefy enough PC, you can play it there as well.
I don't. I can't play Halo, so I'm in trouble. I doubt I can play this. Oh well.
This would be a game that I think would be fun for all of us just to hop in and
chill out
like
together.
You said, just dick around.
Yeah, I actually haven't played multiplayer with any friends. I would love to do that, because there are whole things where you can get into caravans and just drive across Mexico and do stuff together. I feel like that would be fun, but I've only ever really gotten to play it by myself, or the game will have you play against ghosts of people on your friends list in some of the circuit events. Nice. So it's like asymmetrical multiplayer, but it's not like actually playing against them.
Yeah. Going on a GVG road trip.
That
would be so cool. Okay, now you guys have to get this game. It's done. You have to all get this game.
Somebody hook me up with an Xbox Series X.
Nice.
Buy me one, because I just don't have the money for that. So
yeah,
or probably time, but that's all right. All right. Well, I guess it's my turn to talk about my number 2 game of the year, and for the longest time, I thought it was going to be my game of the year. I was hyped for this game.
Ooh.
It sold me on a system. It was the whole reason I needed to get a system. And it lived up to it. It is the best of its series. And that is Ratchet & Clank Rift Apart on the PS5. Holy crap. Like, I have been... Since its release, even before its release and since its release, I've been going through and playing each of the Ratchet and Clank games as part of a stream. Because I remember, really enjoying Crack in Time before that. There's some really good Ratchet and Clank games. And having now played those, I'm almost caught up to it. But having now played most of the series, I can definitely confirm this is the best of the series. It is phenomenal in so many ways. The level design, the music, the characters, the storyline. It feels like they're firing on all cylinders this time around. And it probably helped that Insomniac didn't push themselves into rushing to get the game done, having to do crunch or just having a limited amount of time, because they've always had the quality there. It's just a matter of handicapping themselves because we got to get it out at this certain time and do this certain thing. And what do you know, when they give themselves the time and they have this horsepower behind them, that they can do something that can only be done on modern consoles with the whole Rift mechanic and loading into a next scene like that. It is truly incredible. Like, just for example, I know in the lead up to this, Ash, you played Ratchet & Clank 2016. That game, as beautiful as it is, was made in 8 months.
That's incredible.
Ridiculous to me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They would have had more time because it was supposed to line up with when the movie was originally supposed to release, but it was delayed. And they wanted to work more on it, but by the time they found out about the movie's delay, they had already moved most of the staff over to Spider-Man to help out with that game. So that's why it kind of suffered, not suffered, but didn't get that amount of time, the extra time that it could have gotten.
8 months, though, for what they did accomplish.
Right?
Is incredible.
That's nuts, yeah.
Rift Apart is showing off what Insomniac can do when they're given time, and that's what I want from that one, because Insomniac's been one of my favorite developers for a long time, and to see them really take off between Spider-Man and this, it feels like a golden age for me. And again, it's a fantastic story, great new characters, fun new weapons, a great new villain. Yeah, kind of. It's it's a classic villain, but with a new twist. As a longtime fan, and it works. It's rare for them to go truly sinister with their villains. I think they pulled it off this time around and just make it seem more hopeless than you would typically expect from a Ratchet and Clank game. And the way they bounce it all out, it is just plain fun. The haptic feedback on the controller. If Astro's Playroom didn't sell you on it, this game will, because the whole fact that each gun has a half pull and a full pull for what it can do, just immediately satisfying. It plays into it. It makes the gameplay feel more tactile. than other games. Before, you would just hold down the shoot button, dodge a bit, and just get it out there and switch guns when you run low or have a different situation. Here, even when you're shooting that one gun, you got to think about it. Do I hold in for a half trigger to do this effect, or a full trigger for this effect? And all of a sudden, it's a lot more thoughtful and fun. It pulls it off so well. And man, this was my game of the year for so long. I cannot believe it was supplanted. But as a longtime fan, it is so cool to see Ratchet & Clank finally get some recognition, some real recognition. And I hope that this just leads to more and more games from this series, from Insomniac, because dang it is so good and I just want more. This many years into it, I think 2002 when this series released. So next year is the 20th anniversary. Give us more.
Yeah.
I just want more.
This game is so fantastic. It is so tremendously fantastic, and it is so good that for everything you just said about it, Derek, you didn't even cover some of the best parts of it because there are so many. Mm-hmm. We got two amazing new characters in Rivet and Kit, and that's like a whole part of this game that we haven't even talked about because there's just so much to love about this game, and I have a feeling it might come up again later on, so I won't say too much for it
exactly.
right now.
That's why I didn't go too far into it, because I think I know. Yeah. I've talked to you long enough. I know what's going on.
Yeah.
So that's why I didn't go too in depth. But yeah, I'll just chime in when we get to that point as well. But I that's all I can say. The game makes me happy, and as a good friend, Golden Bowl, whose channel you should check out, and definitely check out their retrospectives on the Ratchet & Clank series and what went into the development of those early games and how much pressure they put on themselves. Fascinating watches over there. But he mentioned having played it himself, just entering a flow state that never got interrupted. He was just in there and going, just from one thing to the next, and it just never wanting to stop, never breaking that concentration, never feeling like, oh, I got to do this now, just keeping it going. And that's incredible, and completely agreed. Like, it's, to me, this is worth buying a PS5 for. It's why I bought a PS5. And if you have friends that also enjoy it, like have it, maybe borrow it, or maybe go over and play the game with them. It's however you can play this, it is well worth it.
Mm-hmm. I've been hearing so much about this game throughout the last year. I'm gonna take this gift card I got for my birthday. I'm gonna put it towards Ratchet & Clank because I want to play this game.
Good man.
I've been waiting
to
find a good opportunity to play this game because everyone is saying how much of a good time it is. Had some issues with my PS5 around that time that it was released, so I didn't really jump on because around that time another game that came out that I really enjoy came out around that time. So yeah, it's something that it's so appealing to look at, and just to hear everybody's just praise on that game. It's really good to see Insomniac making something that they truly catered and spent time with, and to see how well it did in the public eye.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 100%.
I haven't played it yet, but you nearly sold me on the haptics alone. Dude, I just want another game that feels as good as Astro.
Oh man,
it feels so good.
Like you have no idea. I'm blanking on. Actually, here I'll give you two examples, both kind of similar in how they work, but it still gives you an idea. One is a shotgun. Hold down halfway, and you do a one barrel blast. You do a full pull, both barrels at the same time, and you get a bigger shot.
That's so cool.
A later gun, you hold it halfway, and it brings up a shield that blocks enemy fire.
Yep.
Can protect yourself. Hold it down the whole way, and it sends it out forward and hits him like just a big wave.
Yeah, and the jet boots, Ratchet's jet boots that you get eventually, like the way it feels just to glide around in those jet boots, you can feel the feedback of the controller, and it's some of the best haptics I've ever experienced in any game, period.
Truly feels next gen because of the haptics and the load times.
I'm feeling the FOMO
and
now.
As Derek's been saying, those adaptive triggers for each gun, the adaptive triggers feel so good. Mm-hmm. And you can turn them off if you want. I know it's not for everybody. Some people don't like that. I personally do. And
there's a solid amount of customization for accessibility as well in this game.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
No, it's just great. Just great.
All right, Daniel, your number one, your game of the year. What is it?
Here we go.
My
Drum
God.
roll.
I wonder if anyone can guess it.
No.
2016 was the last time that we got an entry to this series. It was pretty well received entry too. This has been the longest time that we've had to wait for a new Mothership title. I can't believe the Switch wasn't released when the last game came out. So I was very happy to see my top game, Tales of Arise, come out and make the biggest splash I've ever seen a Tales game make in the public, probably since even Symphonia on the GameCube. So this game starts out as you play as Alphen, who's a masked working slave who eventually comes across a woman named Shion. She wants to overthrow the lords in each of these individual regions, and they agree to help each other, and their mutual goals eventually lead them across the world where two different races of people, the Danans and the Renans, are constantly in conflict with each other. Now that's a pretty common theme with Tales games, featuring either two or more races of people of two different worlds or both. And even though it treads similar grounds, I think the story is enough about the cast themselves that it doesn't drag or make the narrative too predictable. So, and people that play Tales games, as per usual, the cast has always left me with the strongest impressions after playing Arise. Like, the series consistently makes them very layered, very detailed, and they always like either mesh or clash in very interesting ways. Like, a lot of it is seen during the in-game skits, which unfortunately ditched the whole like 2D anime look and made them look more like comic panels with the in-game models, which is kind of a divisive thing in itself. Other times their relationships come through in the battles themselves. So now Tales used to be the kind of series that kind of stood fairly close to like the core battle mechanics that they kind of built on since the beginning. You would fight in a 2D plane and attack with arts and different inputs that you set for yourself. It's not too unlike a fighting game. The system began to branch out a lot once Tales got to more advanced hardware, but not too much. Like, somebody that's played Symphonia can probably feel that similar feel when they're playing Arise, where your normals and your specials can kind of lead into each other, into aerial attacks and grounded ones. But what's interesting is that like each character has a different skill that you can call on them whenever they're active on the field or not. It's kind of like an assist in fighting games. So Rinwell can absorb and stop magic users if you time it correctly. Kisara can hoist up a shield when someone's charging and cause a break that way. There's other characters that are specifically meant to like shoot down aerial foes or armor breaks, and it's all quick and frantic. Like, and unlike other Tales games, the transition is like way more instant than they used to be. There's no like post-battle overview or banter screen anymore. Everything is just like on the overworld. It just goes in a constant quick loop that keeps the flow going pretty quickly. But even then, you still get the banter and either with them either supporting each other or giving them crap like they usually would in any Tales game. And if you can work in the boost strikes, most battles will end with like a really cool two-person finisher, and like every character, all the 6 characters will have a pair up, and they look really flashy, and it just ends the battle immediately, and it's just such a cool transition. And after you gain like experience in titles, you can use those skill points to unlock abilities, kind of like a skill tree, but it's a little more free. It's a lot like Final Fantasy VII Remakes actually, with the ability to learn abilities via weapons. So it's like a system that keeps on building, so that you could choose which nodes to activate and all that throughout the entire game. And yeah, the music's pretty good too. I can't deny that, because I think Motoi Sakuraba has had the most freedom with this than he's had in a long time in the Tales series. The battle theme is like a clear highlight. Like, that's essentially when you hover over the icon in Tales of Arise, it'll just play that battle theme because they know that's the real kicker in the game. But
Nice.
But yeah, have any of you? I guess we already talked about it, but what was your any experiences with that? Oh, there's Derrick.
I picked it up for Christmas. I want to play it because Tales has been a series that's been a gap for me with RPGs. I've only played Symphonia, and I wanted to pick up Vesperia right away, but it was only on 360. Even when they had that PS3 version that came out in Japan, they never released it in the States, which drove me nuts when I actually had the time to play it. And I've picked up Vesperia since, but still haven't had time to play it. And I always wanted to get to it. I have like 3 or 4 Tales games in my collection, and I've only beaten Symphonia. So I'm hoping at some point I can do this one, because I will say that, like you were talking about the cast, the designs on the cast of characters are, I don't know how well they can be seen, especially with the plastic on there.
They're so good.
They're so good.
I like them a lot.
Each stand out in a own unique way, and that's great for an RPG. You got those distinct outlines while still being, I don't know, just a little bit more detailed. I want to check it out. It's curious enough for me that it's, I don't know. It's a gap that I want to fill. I'll put it that way. So just get that spackle. And,
there's a lot of there's a lot of series that I wish I could like jump into just like that. But yeah, I've heard from other friends that they kind of jump into Tales series through recommendations, and they're just like, yeah, this is a really cool series, very anime. If you're into very anime kind of plots and stories, this is your cup of tea right here. And the characters are always so vibrant and colorful, and
love the battle quotes, the way they interact. That's always something I appreciated in Symphonia, is you could see the character relations even outside of the story cutscenes. That is something they've always excelled at. And love to see
this
more.
game has an owl. Your little mascot is the little owl named Hoodle. And how can
my god!
How can you say no to that?
There's a little. So you guys would you can save and heal and cook food at campfires, and while you're here, you can kind of have support conversations with different characters in your party. And if there's no conversation to actually be had in advance, you'll just kind of have a generic scene together. So Rinwell, who owns this Hoodle, the owl, there's a scene where you and Alphen, sometimes you'll play catch with Hoodle. You'll kind of toss Hoodle in the air, and then the other character will catch, and then you'll toss back and forth. I saved the video of it. It's so precious.
I'm looking at him right now. Like, I'm looking at his design. He's adorable.
I will say this. It's so funny you mentioned this, because I was, for our other Game of the Year discussion that we'll be recording soon, I was looking up the actor for Sophia from Persona 5 Strikers. Have you played that this year, Daniel?
I did, yeah.
Hoodle has the same voice actor as Sophia.
Oh my gosh, is that?
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there you go. There's a little bit of trivia for you.
Yeah, there's so many little connections you can make there. Shion is the same voice actor as Futaba. The main female lead character.
Well, she's very fantastic.
Very different inflection, but she kills that role absolutely.
She usually does. I'm Erica Lindbeck. That's it.
Yeah,
she typically she's Jessie in Final Fantasy VII Remake as well. Like she is.
Yeah.
She's really starting to take off with these gaming roles.
Great.
She nails it every time.
God, I just came across a picture of someone's dog. Looks like a Shiba Inu nuzzling a Hoodle plushie, and it's adorable. It's too much cute in one picture. I can't deal with it. This is a game I have very little doubt that I would end up loving if I had the time to set aside for it. I played the demo, and I've been meaning to go back and play the demo again, because I don't feel like I was quite in the right mindset for it. I didn't love the battle system, but it was also, I just don't think I was in the right mood to play that game at that time. I think if I go into it with the right mindset, I'll have a lot more fun, because I've played other Tales of games and I enjoyed them. Love Symphonia, love Vesperia, but I do have a bit of a checkered history with the series. I ended up dropping Tales of the Abyss about 15 hours in, and I dropped Tales of Legendia at around the same time, and I just kind of got... The pacing just wasn't there for me, and I just kind of didn't care about the story and the characters. And I know Tales of the Abyss, Daniel, you've told me, and everyone has told me that, yes, you're supposed to hate Luke. He's the worst until he's not, until he's awesome. I just didn't get to that point. The pacing didn't do it for me. But there are Tales of games that I love, and I just love the look of this game. I love the aesthetics, the character designs. As you were saying, the soundtrack, from what I've heard of it in the demo, is great. It's nice that Sakuraba is getting a little bit more freedom, because you can definitely hear a Sakuraba soundtrack from like miles away sometimes. Oh, yeah. And it sounds as though he has a little bit more creative freedom here, which I like. And I've heard mixed things about the story. Some people say it's amazing. Some people say there are some pacing issues in the second half. But
at
the end of the day,
I think just the one thing, some of the criticism of this game, I think I could say, is that a lot of the like behind the story lore, it kind of just gets dumped at you towards the very end of the game, and you get a lot of information to deal with. But at least up to that point, everything else is it's a good romp throughout the world. But yeah, nice. there are some issues with the pacing, and at the very least, I quite enjoyed the ending. So I think it wrapped up fairly well with what you have happened at the end.
And there's no DLC. Like that's something that's so refreshing. Like we reported this on TNT before Arise came out, how they were in 2021 releasing a game specifically to have that game be complete as it comes out on the disc or digitally, however you buy it, but that they're not sequel baiting it with DLC or whatever. They're just, hey, Here's a complete story, a complete experience, and in 2021, I have a lot of respect for that approach. So I think I just need to find the time to play this game because aesthetically and outwardly, it's everything. It checks all the boxes. You guys know how much I love anime, and I've heard that this is another power of friendship story. I'm all about it. I really, and like I said, I think I will enjoy the battle system if I just need to give it another shot. I just wasn't right in the right headspace when I played the demo the first time. But I haven't deleted the demo from my PS5, and there's a reason for that, and that's because I'm convinced that this is a game that I will enjoy.
Probably.
Yeah, this game, I think the demo started off in a kind of a rough spot. It's like the third area of the game, and you kind of just thrown in with maybe too much mechanics to deal with all at once and learn, because they kind of gradually show you as you start off and go in. So I think
that happens a lot with
learning,
demos. That's why I tend to stay away from RPG demos, honestly. But it is what it is.
Yeah,
Sure.
I couldn't help myself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the art style, the painterly art style, it's just so beautiful. The pause screens, I can't believe they did this. Like every area you visit, like the pause screen will change depending on the area and the characters you're mostly interacting with at the time. So they kind of like progress in a certain way. They have a really interesting way with progression in this game. I mentioned this before, but not too spoilery. But when you get to the second act, the actual like intro to the game will change. It'll be a different animated intro entirely, and it's like season 2 of the anime, and it's so cool. It's just such a cool.
That's
thing
really cool. I love that. Okay, that's really neat. This is a game that I need to find. What, 40 hours-ish? Is that what we just say, about 40, 50 hours
50
to
is
play?
probably typical for Tail.
Yeah, it'll be a while. I think I took maybe 50, 60 doing a lot of side quests and stuff. But But yeah, definitely give yourself some time for this one.
Yeah.
While you've been talking about this, I've been looking up prices for this game.
Oh.
I'm like,
yeah.
I think it's about time.
for this one in Ratchet, or
for this and Ratchet, honestly.
Oh, yeah. Yeah,
we're gonna sell you on this. I'm just really happy that I feel like I've talked about Tales for like the last 4 or 5 times I've been on here, and I'm a happy boy.
That's good. Well, I like having you be a happy boy. But
yes,
Brandon, obviously you haven't played it yourself yet, so let's see if you can sell us on your number 1 game of the year. What is it?
I don't think I can, because we've been trying for 27 years. 27 years? No, that's not right. 17 years. Monster Hunter Rise is my game of the year. Is that any surprise?
Of course.
No, I was no, not surprised.
Shocker.
So as you all know, I love Monster Hunter. I've always loved the gameplay loop, just the constant sense of progression, the constant sense that you are, moving ahead. There's not really any pacing issues with Monster Hunter because you're always making progress, regardless of what you're doing. But the thing that I always want to stress with Monster Hunter, the reason that I hold it so dearly, is because this is the game that just gets me and my friends together, and that's whenever one Monster Hunter game comes out, that's at least 200 hours I'm going to spend with my friends playing a game together, and that's the most valuable part of the whole experience for me.
You make your own My Friends and My Power story.
Yeah, exactly. There is nothing quite like the feeling of going up against a really difficult monster with your friends, just like barely scraping by, and then you get that victory screen and the monster dies. There has never been a feeling as strong as that for me. It gets your heart racing. It increases your bonds with your friends so much. I remember the super boss, like the true final super boss of Monster Hunter World, Iceborne, that came out like well after the game had been released by this point. Only one of my friends was still playing with me, and it's just the two of us against this monster, and we had been trying for days to beat it. If you don't know, Monster Hunter gives you 3 lives and typically 50 minutes to complete a quest. Most of the time, you're not going to need even close to the 50 minutes to actually win. But we had been struggling real bad with this. Most of the time, we would just die 3 times and that would be it. But we had also had a few attempts where we didn't die 3 times. We just ran out of time because it's that difficult. Man. the only time we'd ever beaten it, we had 15 seconds left.
Oh my god.
Wow. That's
and
awesome.
The two of us popped off so hard that we had finally beaten this boss. Yeah. It was a great feeling. And that's exactly the kind of feeling that keeps me playing Monster Hunter. I'm never going to convince someone to play Monster Hunter who doesn't, like the gameplay. It's definitely something that's kind of difficult to get into. The best way I could describe it is like a 3D fighting game, because you have a certain set of moves, and those are the only moves you're going to have for the entirety of the game, and those moves change with each weapon. Each weapon is basically its own character. So once you've learned your moves, the only way to get better at the game is to learn the monsters. So monsters will have tells when they're doing attacks, and you have to respond to those tells in different ways, whether it means you get in closer and attack, or you get away and dodge, use that opportunity to heal. It's a good feeling once you've really understood how a monster works, and you've got it down so well that, you can make mincemeat of it eventually. I remember when I first played Monster Hunter Tri on Wii. That was my first Monster Hunter game. I went to GameStop and got the demo disc they were just handing out for free. That's how you got your demos on Wii back then, by the way.
That's crazy.
I forgot about that. Yeah. Okay.
And I popped it in, and there's 2 hunts. One against Great Jackie, who is like one of the weakest monsters in the entirety of the Monster Hunter series, and I couldn't beat it because I didn't know what I was doing. The game doesn't tell you how to play the game, and they still don't. They never do, and they never will. The only way to learn Monster Hunter is to learn from somebody else. But somehow, I overcame that initial hump, and I finally did beat it once. And I said, wow, Monster Hunter's awesome. So I went out and bought the game.
I just got my ass kicked. This was great.
Yeah. I would almost call this like an inspiration to Dark Souls. Like, the way that gameplay works.
Sure.
This is kind of the lead up to that. It's not nearly as punishing, but they operate on the same principles. But Monster Hunter Rise itself adds a lot to the formula to shake it up. It adds a lot to make it easier for newcomers. That's a trend that they've been having with the last couple recent entries, like Monster Hunter 4. They made the difficulty curve a little more linear and not so round.
That's always good.
Yeah.
And they're doing their best to try and teach you more things up front, which is good. But I just love all the aerial stuff that they've added to Monster Hunter Rise. Like, they're not kidding with the Rise. You're going to be in the air a lot. You kind of Spider-Man yourself around the field, and once you get really good at it, you can do some pretty ridiculous things. There's an option to turn on gyro controls for the wire bug. So basically what I would do is you hold ZL to ready the wire bug, and you press ZR to shoot it and then fling yourself in that direction. So what I would do is, while I'm fighting a monster, I would just whip my controller another direction and just shoot myself somewhere else.
Nice.
And I eventually got so good at it, I could be really precise. I could fling myself to the left and then fling myself right back, right towards the monster's face, and get some damage in. It makes you feel good once you start mastering those controls. It's awesome. Like learning how to drive a forklift, I guess is the best way I can put it.
There you go. I gotta ask, do you prefer World or Rise?
That's a tough one. I think the new gameplay features in Rise I like overall more, but just the scope, the grandeur, the graphics, everything about World, in that sense, I like more. So there's a little give and take, but that's just Monster Hunter in general. They try new things, and then they drop those new things and try other new things.
Yeah.
They do that to keep it
series
fresh.
like that.
Yeah.
I really like the wire bug when I played the demo. I'm obviously, you know this, Brandon, I'm not a Monster Hunter player. I would hesitate to even call myself a casual Monster Hunter player because for whatever reason I just kind of missed the boat on this series, but I did play the demo of Rise, and immediately felt the differences in the traversal mechanics that the wire bug, allows for. And I really enjoyed that. And I said this about when we were talking about Monster Hunter Stories 2, and I'll say it again. Capcom are working miracles with the with what they do with the visuals on Switch, because this is another example of, it doesn't have the same art style as Stories 2, but it still looks so much better than you would expect most third-party Switch games to look. And
weren't people pointing
really
at this game as evidence that a pro was coming? Like, look at what they're
Oh,
doing.
I
A
think
pro
so
has
for
to
a
be
while.
coming.
So I believe.
Yeah. I definitely got a taste of what you're talking about, though, Brandon. Even though I'm not like a big Monster Hunter guy, I did a preview back in the GX days for Monster Hunter World Iceborne and E3. And even though I didn't know the people I was playing with, we did a hunt together, and even though I was a complete noob, I was able to make some things happen, and they were like, oh yeah, good job, this is your first time, whoa, you're really good, that's awesome. And that camaraderie, even with total strangers, I can only imagine how it must compare when you're playing with friends, and you conquer a hunt together. So if I had that much fun with strangers, I mean, it must be amazing what you were talking about, conquering that one hunt with your friend. But I gotta say, I fear you may have poisoned it for me, because you're talking about how cool it is to conquer these hunts and defeat these monsters. But those monsters were somebody, some rider out there just lost their best friend, man. You killed some rider's
Sending
best
conflicting
friend.
messages here.
no.
We know what side Brandon's on.
Yeah, man,
Hey.
you're ripping these riders away from their monsters, man. No,
There is a moral
I can
dilemma.
totally, yeah, definitely. But no, I totally am not surprised that you love this game as much as you do, and I do specifically remember the traversal mechanics feeling great when I tried the demo. But I am disappointed, Brandon. You haven't talked about the single objective best part of Monster Hunter Rise yet.
Oh, of course.
Are you talking about the Palamutes?
Well, yes,
Certain
and a certain
crossovers?
skin for said Palamutes.
Oh, well, there's
set
two
skins.
that you could be
Yeah,
talking
there are
about
two.
here.
Yeah,
There's
there are two.
Rush and then Amaterasu.
Either one is the right answer. Yes, either one is the right answer. Rush and Amaterasu, yeah.
Monster Hunter has always done a lot of awesome collaborations. For this one, they stuck strictly to Capcom outside of like Sonic the Hedgehog. But in previous games, they would do like anime crossovers. Other games like Nintendo, for instance. There's a lot of Nintendo
Yeah.
stuff in Monster Hunter 4. Yeah, you can have Isabelle as a Palico.
Oh my gosh.
So weird.
All right.
I do love that you get custom animations for some of those skins too. Like I was looking at some footage of the Rush skin, and like when the Palamute's running, he just goes into Rush Jet mode. It's so
Yep.
cool. I love that.
That's awesome.
Then there's
Yeah.
they have an Akuma armor set, and
Oh,
he uses dual
that's
blades,
cool.
but the dual blades are invisible, so it looks like he's punching.
Oh, that's a cool.
So
that's a cool idea.
That's a great
Yeah.
idea. I love that.
Nice.
And then in Monster Hunter World, when they added the Ryu outfit, they added a gesture for the Hadoken and Shoryuken, but you would actually fire a Hadoken and it did damage.
Nice.
That's even cooler, man. That's awesome. I love that attention to detail.
Yeah. Capcom has always, specifically the Monster Hunter team, has always like poured a lot of attention to their fan base and made sure that they're really listening and trying to offer a special experience to them. Because there are not a lot of us here in the West, as it turns out. Much bigger in Japan.
They're building up.
It's
They're
getting
building
bigger
up.
though. I feel
They are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Monster Hunter
it's-
World was like the first time it really made a splash, kind of similar to what Daniel was saying with like Tales of Arise. So we're still experiencing that right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know that.
Kind of reminds me of that line in Arrested Development. There are dozens of us. Dozens.
Yep.
Yep.
Yeah.
Now I'm just imagining Brandon and all his friends in their wacky armor for Monster Hunter. It's like we demanded to be taken seriously.
Yeah.
Me
Yeah.
with my great jaggy head that flops around when I move.
Oh, love it. All right, Ash. I think it's time for your number one. What is your
Yes.
game of the year?
indeed. Well, I don't want to create a rift between myself and anybody else, but I gotta be no. You already know where I'm going with
I
this,
do.
Derek. We kind of teased it earlier, but try as they might, this game came out. Well, it was June. It came out, right? And try as the second half of the year might, it didn't. No other game that came out this year quite eclipsed Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart for me. That is still my number one. And Metroid Dread came close. Forza Horizon 5 came close. Guardians of the Galaxy came close. spoiler alert, that would have been my number 4. But no, Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart. This game is just the most. It's just such a good, complete, feel-good experience. When I got to the end credits, I sat back and I just had to take a deep breath, and I was like, man, that was a fucking awesome experience. And I was just on a high about it for days and weeks after that, just going back and thinking about all the fantastic experiences I had in that game. And it's just, the characters are wonderful, the story is engaging. I haven't played every Ratchet and Clank game like you have, Derrick, but I definitely got the sense that the villain was a lot darker and just more threatening than you usually get from Ratchet and Clank villains. It felt like there were real stakes.
It feels like a big moment when he shows up.
Yeah, it really does. But I think the moment that really, there was a particular moment that really put this game over the top for me, and I was like, yeah, this might be Game of the Year material for me, was one of the boss fights, the first boss fight where you're pulled into different rifts during the boss fight, and the arena changes on you, and you're being pulled into different rifts during the boss fight, and the boss fight just continues on without a hitch. There's no interruption whatsoever. You just have to adapt on the fly to the new arena, the new dimension you've just been pulled into, and it's so epic, and there's so many explosions and particle effects.
Oh yeah, there's stuff,
but no performance
everywhere.
issues.
No, it is
no performance
rock
issues.
Solid. They are wizards,
and it's just it's amazing.
It's why the PS2 Ratchet and Clank games are so tricky to port, because Insomniac finds their little tricks that only they really know on that, and specifically made for that system to make the crazy things they're doing work. And I don't know how they do it, but they just pull it off. And I remember the first time I saw one of those new those portals to go into those little bonus areas.
Yeah,
I immediately went into the center and just looked back and forth.
I did the same thing.
Just seeing if we could make it like how seamless it is, and it's just seamless. All works. And then you get the boss fight after that you mentioned, and they just find ways to up the adrenaline, like the one grind boot sequence in that game.
Yeah,
I mean, I didn't talk about it. I want to get your I'll get your thoughts, but the movement in this game is so much grander. That dash move that you have now,
I love,
really ups the game for this, because it's not just the simple. As a longtime fan, a lot of times you could just beat bosses by strafing around them and flipping. You'll dodge most attacks in Ratchet and Clank. Still fun, but it's very simple in that way. This, you have to do more. You have to use the dash. You can't do that typical thing. There's too much going on. And
the dash move just looks so cool too. The visual feedback you get from it.
It warms my heart that somebody that's barely played the series has this as their game of the year. That makes me so happy. You have no idea.
Yeah, because I've only ever played the original, the remake of the 2016, and then Ratchet and Clank Future Tools of Destruction. I haven't played any of the others. I would like to. I just never really got around to it. But this game, and it also works. It's great as a sequel, as like a follow-up to the Future series, but it's also a great standalone game as well. Like I'm sure I would get a lot more out of it if I had references played to every game like you have.
Yeah, there's references galore. Most of the planets you are visiting are from previous games, to just remix this time because they're a different dimension. But you don't need them. You really don't. You have just enough information that you need to know to make this work.
And I like that some of the planets you go to kind of change things up in ways that I wouldn't have expected. Like some of the planets are a little bit open world-ish, not true open world, but it is you get gigantic areas that you kind of need to explore in a non-linear fashion. And one of my favorite planets is, I can't remember the name now, but the planet that it is kind of openish, and you explore it with Ratchet. It's where he gets his jet boots.
Oh yeah, that one.
And you just get to jet around everywhere. The haptics feel so good, and it's kind of almost like a Shadow the Hedgehog-esque skating thing that he does, and it just feels so cool.
That skating thing is completely unique to this, where you alternate in order to get that boost. Like there's
It
more
feels so
haptics for you,
good to
Brandon.
pull off.
You push one, and you get to feel the boost come out more from each boot until you get the full on like
It feels so good to pull off.
burst.
I think my wallet's going to be upset today.
And there's a real gee whiz factor too to the rift mechanic, where kind of like you, Derek, when I discovered my first rift leading to another area, I did what you described, but I also like went around the rift and looked at it from behind, and like it's so cool that you only go into the new area if you actually go through the rift. And my wife was watching me play this game, and she pays attention to a lot of the games I play, but this one in particular, she really stopped and started watching because she's like, these visuals, she doesn't comment on graphics that often, but she was like, these visuals are unbelievable. And I'm like, I know, right? And she's like, why do gamers complain to developers again? You guys don't deserve them. How are they doing? This is magic. And I know, right? How could you possibly complain about this? And it's so true. Insomniac just worked miracles with the PS5 hardware, and the boss fights, again, the dynamic boss fights with the switching rifts and arenas are proof positive of that. But the game also excels in the quieter moments, the character moments. Again, we didn't go too much into it when you brought it up, Derek, but Rivet and Kit are two of my new favorite characters from this year. They're both so lovable. And Jennifer Hale, I got to give her a special shout out. Jennifer Hale, everyone knows she's one of the best voice actors ever. And
Amazing.
She brings all of her talents to bear with Rivet. And what a likable, just badass character. I love her design. I love her voice. Even though she doesn't play that much meaningfully differently from Ratchet, she still has her own vibe. And
I
then,
appreciate
then, of course,
that because the
Kit.
weapon progression carries over. Because otherwise it'd be
Yeah, exactly.
a little annoying.
Yeah.
So I appreciate that they make that a thing.
Yeah, and then just the quieter moments between Rivet and Clank and Ratchet and Kit, and you just love all these characters, and it's just so it excels in the big cinematic, loud, explosive moments, but it also excels just as much in those quiet character interactions, and it all just comes together into an overall package that is just so supremely satisfying to play through. Some people said it's maybe a little too short, especially if you consider the $70 price point.
This is typical
I guess,
length for Ratchet and Clank. Plus, do challenge
Yeah.
mode. When you do challenge mode, there are, I think, 2 or 3 new weapons that aren't available in the main game.
Right.
You get new weapons, including the return
The
of the
Pixelizer's one of them.
Yeah, the Pixelizer. One of the best
love
guns.
the Pixelizer.
So,
Yeah.
So,
And it felt like the right length to me. It didn't overstay its welcome. There's that sweet spot. You don't want a game to be too long because you don't want it to start feeling long in the tooth. And could there maybe have been like another planet to do like maybe 3 to 5 more hours? Sure. But I didn't really end up feeling like it was too short, to be honest.
No, it did not feel too short. I would have liked another planet to demonstrate one of the other cool things they did in the game, which is the time travel sort of thing, where you had the 2 different
That was so
types.
cool.
Because it was cool when it happened. It's breathtaking when it happens, but it only happens twice. So
Yeah, you're talking about the mining planet
Yeah.
for one of those examples, right? That's so cool, where you're phasing between 2 different dimensions, which are representative of a different time period for that planet. One where it's been blown up, and the other where it's still
functional.
together and not blown up, and there's still mining rigs going on. And the way that you just phase in between those 2 very different versions of the same place, it's both at once dazzling but also haunting when you consider, you almost get to see what leads up to the destroyed version of that planet. It's so, God, I love this game, and talking about it just reaffirms why it's my game of the year. I love this game to death, and everybody should play it. It is worth getting a PS5 for. It's just phenomenal. Phenomenal.
One Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart, please.
Nice. What a game.
I promise
And
satisfaction.
give me Insomniac, if you're watching, and of course you're watching, why wouldn't you be watching GVG? Rivet and Kit standalone game, please, as soon as possible. Please, whether it's an expansion or
Kit
just a
impressed me
standalone
because they
game.
kept that secret. You never
they
saw
did.
Kit in any pre-release materials.
Right. But I will be first in line. Well, maybe second. I know you'll be first in line, Derek, but I'll be right behind you in line for a Rivet and Kit standalone adventure.
I hope. I mean, I feel good things coming in the future, and I think Insomniac realizes what they got going on here. So now we got their before the PS3 era was going between Ratchet and Clank and the Resistance games. Now we're into the time where I'm going between Ratchet and Clank and Spider-Man. You know what? I'm okay with this, and I guess Wolverine is as well. So
and
Ratchet
Wolverine
and Clank
now,
and Marvel. Sure.
Yeah.
And if they keep doing those quality haptics in all their future games, I mean, as we said, some of the best haptics feedback in the adaptive triggers, it just elevates an already amazing game to just stratospheric levels. It's just, man, those haptics are so good. I want to go back and replay the game right now. It's just, man,
I'll be doing it soon. I am so close. I got about 2 more sessions left of the 2016, and I'll be back playing Rift Apart. So
nice. And they now have that 40 FPS mode now, where it's like that 40 hertz mode they just released as I was finishing the game, and I'm like, well, now I got to replay it in that mode too,
darn.
because there are so many different. I mean, like so many games these days, it has performance mode and quality mode and what's the reflective? I can't think of it right now.
Ray tracing.
Ray tracing, yeah, they got ray tracing mode, and now they have this like 40 hertz mode that combines all of those things. This game looks amazing no matter how you choose to play it, but yeah, well, I just love this game to death.
Absolutely. All right. Well, time for me to get to my number one. And again, I can't believe the Ratchet fan did not put Ratchet as his number one game.
I know.
It's a weird thing, but I'm also a fan of other games. And I'm sorry, but this is also another example of the best in its series. Bar none, in my opinion. Metroid Dread.
I knew it. I had a feeling.
Yeah. It is.
Yep.
I loved it from the moment I started playing. The environments, the way you move through those environments, the enemies, the way they remixed how you get items, the fact that it felt like it took a while to get the morph ball, and you really started to miss it, which I've never missed the morph ball because it's always the first thing.
So to have something wrong.
Yeah, it just like it's going to be there. There's obviously bits that you can't reach without the morph ball, but it still felt weird not getting it right away. And going through and seeing how they do it and how the game, again, no spoilers, kind of shifts on its head at a certain point and becomes a different entry in a way. That's brilliant. That was an crap moment. There's a lot of crap moments what they introduce with this game and what you experience and what you do. It has never felt like Samus has been more on her back foot in this game while still being as confident as she is, as you guys talked about before. She is, she's got this. She has been on the ball with this game, and it still feels like it might be just too much for her. But then you get these revelations and these things that happen. It just feels good when you got everything coming together. When you have the storm missiles, I forget the official name, but the storm missiles, and then you got the phase shift at the same time. Bosses become a dream of just dodging and getting that right moment. And that moment, those little things that pop up as advice, saying every move can be avoided. They're not wrong. That is absolutely true, and that's never felt like the case to me in a Metroid game before. It feels like I don't have to take a hit, that I can get good enough, and that just makes each new boss encounter that much more fun, that much more impressive, and I was just enjoying it from the start. But the thing that really solidified it, even beyond the final boss fight, which again, amazing. We don't. that's been established. I didn't get to finish it because of technical issues when I was trying to stream it. But I went back through and started the game over on hard mode just to see if I could get the under 4 hours to get all the artwork and stuff. It was so freaking fun to have the skill set that I had from the beginning, the end of the game, transferred to the beginning, have that movement and just feel like you're flowing. Like, you want to talk about flow state, you're just going constantly into this. And I know you're talking about pacing issues, Ash, but replay the game. Have that skill set you have now, and it feels perfectly paced. Getting each new game, each new ability, and even the bosses that do repeat. They do reuse certain enemies, certain mini bosses. I
was actually going to argue in favor of that, because of what you were saying, Derrick.
Yeah.
Because they stack on all those new abilities for you that the way you interact with that same boss changes.
It does, and it becomes more like what it's kind of obviously being based on as time goes on. And the Emmy is a great addition. It plays like most other enemies of that type, though, where it's threatening. You do feel that dread initially, but after you die a few times, it's more you shift over to just annoyance. So, fortunately,
and that was kind of one of the things I was going to get at, was just like as much as I love the idea and the designs of the Emmy, the animations are amazing, but the Emmy zones ended up feeling a little bit more like a hindrance to me than I would have wanted. And
I think that is always going to be an issue with a game of this type, where you have an enemy hunting you down that you cannot kill. Same thing happens in Alien Isolation. I love the Alien in Alien Isolation, but you die to that thing 5-6 times, and you're just like, I just want to get past this part. It loses its effect, and
it changes the way you interact with it in terms of like fear.
Exactly, and the fact that you respawn so quickly, I think, mitigates that a lot. It doesn't feel as devastating to have it happen, but there's still feels really good when you get that counter on an Emmy and when you're about to die.
It does.
Every time it feels good.
Yeah. One thing I didn't mention earlier is the game is very smart about guiding you in the direction it wants you to go without being overt about it. Like, if you explore enough, you'll find that certain pathways that were once open to you now are closed to you, thus closing off a potential avenue of exploration, making it, not too easy to get lost. Or it's not too easy to get lost in this game, and that could be a point for or against, depending on how you feel about more linear Metroid experiences. But I feel like it strikes a really good balance between the hyperlinear Metroid Fusion and something that's a little bit more open, like Super Metroid. It kind of gets it's a good sweet spot.
The difference there for me is like, I wouldn't say that I ever got lost, but like, I was never not moving. You know what I mean? Like, I was always moving forward. I didn't know if I was going the right way, but because of how the game's map is designed, I always got funneled that way without feeling like I was being funneled that way. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
exactly. Totally know what you mean.
Sure. I think.
Okay, Dave.
I think later on in the game as well, I noticed, and I looked up online to see if other people noticed this as well. And during certain areas where you can kind of go wherever you want, there are certain paths, and even early on in the game too, there are certain paths that have these blue butterflies that are around certain openings, and those would help guide you as well if you really are lost.
They tell you they're going the right way.
I didn't notice those.
Yeah, which is really cool.
Yeah.
No, I didn't either.
That's cool. That's real cool. It's the thing that threw me off a lot the first time I played was the first time I'm like, you finish up the first area and you go to the second area. I'm like, there's still a lot to explore here. You sure you want me to go here yet? It just felt weird. But then you get to that second area, you get that little short burst of like, hey, we're introducing this new thing. Figure out how to get to it, and then use it for a little bit, and then go back, and then opens up the previous area that you were just in. Really smart. There's just something about the level design in this game that is aces, and it just hit on all fronts. Like it really was a struggle to choose between this and Rift Apart, because to me they feel like two sides of the same coin.
I know.
But I think the arcadey feel, the tighter boss fights, is what sold Metroid for me. Like, where
that's totally fair.
If I restarted Ratchet and Clank, obviously I'll really, still really enjoy it, have a lot of fun, but the skill sets that I got from the end of the game don't necessarily carry over in the same way that Dread does. And I think that's the kind of the key for me. That said, Rift Apart has better rewards for doing everything.
And to be fair, even though Rift Apart was my number one of the things I forgot to mention, which is a huge point in Metroid Dread's favor, is not just the boss fights in general. Well, actually, I wouldn't know. The boss fights have those dynamic arenas going on, like I mentioned in Rift Apart, which is awesome. But the bosses themselves and their patterns and their designs aren't as interesting as those in Dread, especially the final boss. Like, I love Rift Apart, obviously my number one, but the final boss could not be more of it's just not nearly as interesting as Metroid Dread's final boss. It's like, it's a cool fight, but not memorable in the way Dread's final boss is.
It's spectacle, but not significantly different.
Mechanical complexity. Yeah, exactly.
I remember, like, late at night, getting to Dread's final boss the first time. And this was like day 2 of me playing it. Like, I did not save any time. I played the shit out of Metroid Dread. But I remember really struggling with it for a while. I think it took me anywhere between 45 minutes to an hour to beat it. But also, it was super late. I'd been playing all day. I probably needed to sleep. But I did it. And then after that, the next day or so, I went around and just got the rest of the collectibles that I missed and hit 100%. And then I went back to fight the boss again and beat it on my first try.
Right.
Like, it really trains you.
Yeah, it really builds into you, because when I got to that, I was dying on the first phase, and I got it down, got it through the second phase, no hits. Then with same issue, and then get to the final phase with no hits. Like, you just get it. Go ahead, Daniel. I'm sorry I interrupted you.
Oh, no, it's pretty much what you said just there. Just like, I think I spent a long time on the final boss at first, because I had I definitely didn't have all the energy tanks, so I would just keep on dying, and I would get to the next phase, and I would beat the second phase, and then there's a final phase, and then until I figured out the trick with the sun, that was just ruining me each time. It was like, it was a whole learning experience, and still smartly designed, and it's also, like, as far as the story goes, a lot more impactful as well, because of how how that character relates to Samus. So it's amazing on all fronts, honestly.
And I love the fact that it really focuses overtly on that true horror vibe that Metroid Fusion did so well. I've talked a lot about how much I love Fusion, and that's because of the atmosphere in that game. And you can say, atmosphere is a strong point of every Metroid game, but Fusion really doubles down on that horror element, and so does Dread. And I love that about both of those games.
There is nothing quite like the power fantasy of the very end of that game.
Oh my
it's so good. It's so cool.
I don't think you've ever felt more powerful in a Metroid game.
That was insane.
And given it, and of course I won't spoil anything, but given how I felt about the Emmys and how much of a progression blocker I felt or actually a pacing blocker I felt they could be, and some of the frustrations there, all I'll say is the last Emmy. That's all I'll say. But all of that is so cool. It's so one of my favorite moments of the game.
Love that.
Bar none.
Agreed.
Yeah.
So, that is my game of the year. That's, I think, all of our games of the year. I'd say a pretty good list. Some overlap, some original. I think, you talked to us enough, you could probably guess what we were going to pick. Only, I think, Brandon threw us a curveball there.
Definitely.
I will, as Dread might not be in my top 3, but make no mistake, that is one of the best games I've played all year.
Right. I mean, we can keep going.
On that note,
like, just as a quick note, if you guys listed it out, I'm not sure if you did, but I needed to in order to help myself. For my top 6, Persona 5 Strikers at number 6, Resident Evil Village at number 5, Mario Party Superstars at number 4.
For me,
Mario Party
4
Superstars
would have been
is 4.
Dread.
Okay.
5 would have been Village. And I think I'd put Superstars at 6. Yeah. It's a really good game.
Superstars is really good.
Superstars is really good, yeah. My number 4 was Guardians of the Galaxy, for sure. I didn't list out 6, though. I only did 6 because those were the games I was struggling with, like which one goes to number 3, so you don't have to go to 6. Honestly, Mario Party might have been number 5 for me, but Guardians of the Galaxy is an easy number 4, for sure.
Yeah, I think I love how we all have Mario Party on our list, like of all things. Like, mine's probably at number 5 as well, because just the fact that it was the game I've always wanted from Mario Party for many years, and to see it done so well, and with more opportunities to see it, to see more just the opportunity for it to expand more with DLC is just such a great feeling. And then I guess number 4 would probably be, gosh, I'm on the spotlight's right on me.
That's fine.
Number probably like I really did enjoy Persona 5 Strikers as well.
It's really good.
Just the fact that it is a continuation of Persona 5, the base game, and how it was more a Persona game than a Musou game. It really just brought everything that I want. I wanted that road trip. That road trip was exactly what I needed with all the characters.
Especially at that time of year. It's like, man, I wish I was actually on this road trip.
Yeah.
You know what? If it counts, number 5 for me might have been the intermission episode of FF7 Remake.
I'd count that
because I
That's probably my
really
6.
loved.
Yeah, I need to finish it, or else
Yeah,
it'd
5 or
probably
6.
be on there. But yeah.
Yeah.
It was a great episode.
Well, with that, I think that covers it for our Game of the Year top 3 discussion. Did not expect to go for 2 hours. Holy crap. But
right?
This is not the end, because we do have one more discussion coming up related to Games of the Year, where we're talking about some of the categories. So that may not be, these games might not have been the best that reach our top, but they did some things that are really well, and we wanted to highlight those. So stay tuned for that, as we'll have another one of these discussions. Maybe as long, hopefully not, because holy cow.
Probably not.
We'll see how it all goes down. But of course, we're also eking closer to 75,000 subs. And once we hit 75,000 subs, we'll be giving away a Switch OLED. Some games on our Game of the Year list would look really good on that system. And all you have to do is subscribe to the channel in order to get that. It'll just one person from our subscribers will get that Switch OLED. And you can look forward to that. Otherwise, if you enjoyed this discussion, you can support us over on Patreon at patreon.com/dvgaming. But even just subscribing to the channel, ringing that bell, sharing these videos around, commenting and debating our choices, telling us your choices, helps us all a ton. So until next time, you have a great end of the year, or great 2022. We'll see what games we get and discuss those this time next year. So until then, bye.
Till we
Bye,
meet
everybody.
again.
See ya.